Hi, everybody. As you know, I'm Sam Norgard, and it's my pleasure to be sitting next to Deborah Cherry Moshe. And I am actually in Nova Scotia, and Deb, you're in Savannah. Deb, do you happen to have a color wheel in your life?
Yes, I do. And it's in this book, which I'm going to show you examples from. This is a color theory book called Color, a Love Story, which I wrote. Plug. And inside, one of the things that I'll show you, here's a color wheel. And you'll see that there are 12 hues in a color wheel. You've probably all seen this. Yellow at the top, red at the lower right, and blue at the lower left. And then the secondaries are in between the primaries, and there are 3 of them: orange, violet, and green. And then in between them are what's called the tertiaries, and there are 6 of them, and they're named by we call them parents on either side of them. So primary yellow, secondary orange, in between them is tertiary yellow-orange, and so forth. Around it goes.
So the name of one hue would be yellow-orange or yellow-green. It's not referring to the 2 separate hues.
That's correct. It's hyphenated. And it's the tertiaries are hyphenated, and they're named, excuse me, by their parents. So this is yellow and this is green. This actual hue is yellow-green, and it's hyphenated, yellow-green. And then we have blue-green, blue-violet, red-violet, red-orange, yellow-orange. So there are 6 of those.
Got it.
And what we're going to talk about is a specific color scheme taken from this wheel. A color scheme is simply an arrangement of hues from the color wheel that theoretically help the designer or artist unify the colors in their design. That's all they are. And there are a whole bunch of them. If your design is based on a single hue, any hue at all, well, yellow-orange would be fine. If your whole composition is based on that, it's called monochromatic. If it's based on 2 or 3 hues right next to each other, that color scheme is called analogous. And there are several more. What I want to introduce to you today is what we'll be using on this Triangle Love project. And it's called a split complementary color scheme. So first you have to know what is a complementary color scheme. I think that would help. A complementary color scheme is simply any 2 hues directly across from each other on the color wheel, and their tints, tones, and shades. I'll show you an example of that. Here you have 4 examples. This is, by the way, Johann Itten's The Elements of Color. But here you have 4 examples of hues. That's blue, orange, yellow, red. And what this shows you is how you can change those hues by adding gray to make them a little bit duller and make them a little bit lighter or darker. In this example, the gray is lighter than the natural color, so these tones are getting lighter and lighter. You know what? That's a bad example.
You think so? I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's pretty. It's definitely pretty.
Well, I think some of the really important words you're bringing up are tints, tones, and shades.
Okay.
Because when I would send students to the bead store, there would be hundreds of choices of color. And I'd say, okay, go to the hue first. But then within that hue, there's a lot of variety. Oh.
This might help clarify it a little, and this is very limited. Again, this is Johann Itten's book, but around this ring, sort of this big ring here, on the outer edge of the circle, those are the pure versions of the hues. Pure, we call them saturated in color theory talk. So you can just say that at any art party and you'll wow them. Saturation, but it just means they're pure. If you add white to any of those hues, See how they get lighter? That's what this represents. It just represents that what they look like as they get lighter and darker. So if you add white to any hue, you're making what's called a tint. If you tint your hair, typically you're making it lighter. If you add black to a hue, any hue at all, you're making what's called a shade. And you can see how the hues get darker. And those are still considered that hue. So for example, if this is green, then all of these versions, and believe me, there's millions more, not just those 3 or 4, that they're all considered green. They're just shades of green. These are tints of green. Get it?
Yeah.
So if we see just this little tiny smattering on each of these hues, imagine how wide a range there is with just tints and shades. And interestingly, I just want you to notice what happens to yellow. When it gets darker, it almost turns into an olive green or a brown. That's what happens to some of these warmer colors. They turn into kind of a brownish color, but they're still considered that hue. So that's tints and shades. And then tones are a little bit different. They're simply making a duller version of the hue, regardless of whether you're making it lighter and darker. You're just making it duller. So let me see if I can show you. Here's a student's work, and at the top is this big painting that the student did. Her name's Anna Vetter, by the way, but she did a painting in a complementary color scheme of yellow, green, and red, violet. And so in each of these patchy areas, she's divided them each into lots of these little sections of variations of yellow, green, and red, violet. And then what I did was I digitally enhanced them or de-enhanced them, I don't know, desaturated them, and to show you what happens to those colors as they get more and more neutral or toned. Okay.
So Deb, you brought up the word saturated and now desaturated. How can I use desaturated at that same cocktail party to use it correctly?
Well, you might notice that the sofa in the living room is a really like bright, startling red, saturated. And maybe the throw pillows around are a little more muted. And I think of them as quieter. They're just quieter. They may have had gray added to them, or they may have had their complement added to them. And those are the 2 ways that you can make a tone. And in beading, you can do that with Cadence FaceTiming me.
Hello. So I could say,
I gotta call you back, sweetheart.
I could say, I love your saturated red couch with those desaturated throw pillows. Yes.
The desaturated, the other word for the desaturated colors is tones.
There we
You
go.
could call them tones of red.
Great.
So yeah, you can throw that around.
Well, we're hoping to meet all our participants at some kind of soiree sometime in the future. And so we'll be expecting comments about the couch and the pillows.
Absolutely. We'll talk pillows. So you understand what a complementary color scheme is. And let me just go back to the color wheel for a second.
So complements are opposite each other on the color wheel.
Right. So if this is red, what do you think the complement is? Green. If this is red violet, because it's between red and violet, red violet's complement is
yellow green.
Yellow green. That's right. You got it. Now, we're actually going to use a specific split complementary scheme in this Triangle Love project. By the way, I'm very excited about the Triangle Love project.
I am too.
Crazy, crazy wonderful. In this project, we are asking you, our lovely participants, to use a split complementary color scheme that always uses red. How can you do that? I'll tell you. Red can be one of your colors, and the partners of it, the split complementary partners to red, are always the colors on either side of its complement. They flank it.
You go over to the complement and then you split
over
off.
there. and you split it into its two little side partners. So
Yeah.
instead of green, we wouldn't use green. Instead, we would use yellow green and blue green. And this particular printing, unfortunately, that doesn't look very blue green to me, but it's supposed to be blue green.
Yes.
Blue green looks a little more aqua,
Yeah.
or turquoise. Anyway, now, do you have to use that exact red, that exact yellow green, and that exact blue green? No. What's exciting is all of the tints, tones, and shades of those three. And I'll show you in a minute what I chose for my color palette. The palette, by the way, is simply the choice of colors you're using in your composition. Okay, so another way to use red in a split complementary color scheme is to use it with, flank it over to go over 2 steps, red, purple, and what would be the split complementary partner to that?
Yellow green.
The one in the
Oh,
right,
no.
yellow green, exactly. Good, Sam, you got it. So red, violet, yellow, green is the second scheme you can choose. The third one and the final one is red, orange, and blue green. Do you get that?
I did.
So
I did.
red is one of the partners in all 3 cases.
Yeah.
So you're limited to these hues: orange, orange, red, red, violet, yellow, green, and blue green. Does that sound right?
I love
believe
it.
that's right.
So the 3 schemes that we have are all split complements, and each of them contains red, and red will become kind of a connector between the different schemes.
Right. And then I just have to back up and go over a mistake I think I made. I meant to say orange, not this one. Orange,
Yeah.
red, violet, yellow, green, and blue green. Does that make more sense?
Yes.
Those are the 5 hues, plus black, plus white are optional if you care to sprinkle those in at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in addition to that split complement, was there one other thing we were going to do in these compositions, in these triangles? I believe
we are going to ask that all the participants include a red edge on one side of the finished triangle frame, and that edge is at least 3 rows of red beads. So as we've developed this project, I certainly have had difficulty coming up with the right words to help get this idea across clearly. But one of the tools that we have, Deb, is we have a Facebook page, and people can start to post their images, and we'll form a community of helping each other with images that we're making that all have one side of the 3-sided triangle, finishing with 3 rounds of red beads.
3 rows, do you mean? Or 3
Yes.
rounds?
Yes.
3 rows. Easy to get those because they both start with R.
I know.
Red that starts with R. There's so many R's.
I'll be calling it ravioli. So let's see, what else did we want to go over? We wanted to go over that there were 3 choices of different palettes, and we've talked about that. We talked about understanding the hues and how 6 of the hues have descriptions that are 2 colors, such as the yellow green, the blue green. I think that's important because the words can make it sound like we're talking about 2 hues, but we're talking about 1 hue, such as yellow green. Now, one of the things I did want to say is, Deb, if we have people who are brand new to beading, that on the Norgard Designs site, Lucas Ohl has contributed some incredible learning lessons, and you would find them under Lucas Learning, and they right now we've posted 2. They help you with language. They help you with knowing the name of your tools, the name of your material, and then I join in with
Wow,
giving demonstrations. So
that's
if you're
great.
out there, yeah, it really is great. If you're Lucas is a manual writer, and I, of course, am a bead teacher. So we put our skills together, and he has just designed phenomenally clear instructions for learning bead embroidery and for off loom weaving. So there is a cost. Those are $29. It's a real bargain.
That's a deal.
But yeah, it is. But if you're new and you're excited about joining us, those would help you have the confidence and skills and vocabulary to join us and be successful and feel confident.
And have fun with it. It's so easy to have fun with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Deb, were we going to do the cutting off next?
Yes, and I wanted to just mention too that this red edge, I wanted to kind of show you which hues I used, and I want Sam to show you what hues she used too for our split complements. But when we have all of your triangles, the frame part of the triangles gathered together, and they all have that red edge will serve as a way to, I'll call it a common color. So it'll serve as a way to unify the entire piece of all of your variations, all your patterns, all your tints, tones, and shades of those split complementary schemes. And it'll also serve to create what we call movement. And movement is simply the journey that your eye takes. It's like a visual journey that your eye takes around a whole design. So that'll help us with that. It's going to be just beautiful, I think.
And Deb, one of the things I think of it doing is it's kind of visually their voice, the individual voice of the artist making these, to show us how we want to line things up. So if you can bump up against my image here, well, so that might tell us to place those next to each other. Or maybe it would turn a corner and do something like this. So it's giving us something that's very individual, because their reds may be different kinds of reds.
Lots of different kinds of reds.
Yeah, and it'll somewhat speak to us to tell us how to place these in the final form. And I think that being the person that kind of oversees getting these together, that is a feat and a half, is getting these together. And I think some direction that comes visually with the piece will be really fun and clarify it.
Yeah.
So Deb and I have both looked at the directions in how to make the triangle and how to move forward with beading. So the triangle is 12 rounds, and then you keep beading with a new color thread for 18 more rounds, and making sure that the last 3 rows are on one edge of the triangle. And now, Deb, I'm going to show Deb how you cut this off, and we're going to encourage her how to do it too.
I'm scared. I'm scared.
It's scary.
Okay.
So on mine, I used red thread to make my triangle, and I just used bead soup to make my triangle, and it's there in the center.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. And now we want to free the tool from the frame. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for the new color thread that I used for making the frame rounds, which was red. And we'll see that that red thread starts right up above the first round of my row.
So everything in a frame is red thread?
Everything in the frame is red thread, and
Okay.
everything in the tool, the triangle tool, is blue thread.
Okay.
So we're going to cut. You might remember that peyote stitch has 2 threads running through it. It attaches a bead to the previous round, and then it attaches itself to the next round. And we're going to free the triangle from the frame by cutting the first thread in what is my blue thread, or on my 13th row. And we're going to do that at each points of the corner. So Deb, I'll show you, and hopefully that'll help you feel confident and able to do this as well. So let me go ahead and put the camera on me speaking. I think, well, here, no, we'll keep us right next to each other. I like that. So I'm going to drop my camera down, and let's see, Deb will tell me, am I in the, you can see
Yeah. Yeah.
triangle? And I'm not going to cut yet. I'm just going to place my scissors where I want them to cut. And of course, I need my handy dandy light to just have a little bit more light on this subject. And I'll turn it back
Now
to you.
you're out of the camera right now, so pull it back towards you if you
Okay.
can.
So that's where I'm going to cut.
So what color are you cutting?
I'm cutting the first line of blue thread,
Which is part of the frame.
which is part of the frame. That's right. So if I tip so that my eyes are looking at this from the side, you can see the colors a little bit more easily, and get a good light on there. And I can see that that's where my new color thread starts. Let's say you forgot to change color threads. You could just count forward to the 13th row and cut the thread at the top of those beads. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to stay on camera.
While you're doing that, can I talk about your hues that you used in that
Yeah, would you?
piece? Looks like you used red, orange, yellow, orange, and blue, and wait a minute. Red, orange, and blue, green. Am I right?
Yes. That's exactly what I used.
Okay. Oh, I didn't mean for you to stop. I just wanted to bring that up. Red. Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Yeah. And then I tried to think what you were talking about with tints, but I identified this as a tint of the orange. And
Very
this
nice.
gives me an opportunity to talk about, I also wanted to try some different finishes. So with beads, we also have, and so here I have a very matte and dull or desaturated turquoise.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back to here. And you can see that I cut that thread. I had my scissor on, and it's already starting to break out. See that?
This is so scary.
And, you know, I like to go ahead and use each corner as a place to cut my thread. So I'm going to go in here. It just makes for shorter threads to pull out. Because remember, you're cutting the thread that holds the frame to the tool. And
this is just unbelievable that this works.
I know, Kate McKinnon. And now I just pull, and those little pieces of thread come.
Wow, look at that.
Apart. And there's usually a little bit to kind of clean up, and sometimes you'll drop a bead and you just stitch it back in. I do ask that everybody go ahead and reinforce that edge again, just by passing a thread through, so that if the tail should work its way back, it will have what I call a sister thread to hold it on.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you can reuse that little triangle as your tool over and over again.
That's right. So I can, and as people start to explore this idea, you can do all kinds of things with this as a tool that wouldn't even be the shape of a frame. So it's the beginning of a whole big adventure. Deb, do you think you're brave enough?
Cool. I don't know. Let me first, I may be. At first, I want to just point out the hues that I used.
Great.
Can you see? Let me see if I can get a little pointer in here. Here's my little pointer.
Yes.
Okay, there's my red. And I purposely used these versions of these hues. I used yellow, green, red, and violet. That's what I used. Red, violet, yellow, green. So my red is actually a tone of red. It's not super bright, but it's still red. My yellow green, look, do you see that color that looks kind of like a weird, dull green? That's actually a shade of yellow green. So tone of red, a shade of yellow green, and then that real light violet, that is a tint of violet. So that's what I used in mine. A tint of violet, a shade of yellow green, and a tone of red. All right.
So you could use as many reds or violets, whatever's in your palette, you could use as many as you want.
You can experiment and use them in any way you want to, as long as that last 3 rows of one side is red. And to make it simpler, I just used the same red that I used in my design. That's what I did. I didn't change it up. But I'm not as, excuse me.
That's what I did too. I used the same red for this edge that we're requiring or requesting. That I had used in the pattern work. So
okay, so I'm gonna, my thread was black on the tool and beige or almost white on the frame. So that means that in each corner, I'm cutting off the white.
Is the white what's in the frame? Ask yourself that.
It is.
It is. That's right. So, and what is the color of the first bead in the frame?
Violet.
It's violet. So can you see at the top of the violet, there should be your white thread?
I do see it.
Okay, that's what you're going to cut.
Here I go.
I love her.
This might just be crazy enough to work. Let me try another one. Yeah. I can just see beads exploding into my computer and all over my kitchen. That would be wonderful, actually. Okay. So. Ooh, look.
Is it working?
Oh,
it worked.
So.
It worked. It worked. Beautiful job.
Woo-hoo. And I'll clean that up and reinforce the inside of it.
It looks fabulous. So here we have triangle sport, triangle love.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Here, let's pose.
I wanted to just take a minute to talk about some of the patterning that you can see, because we are posting tutorials or lessons on how to create different patterns. Carol is going to show you how to make a diagonal stripe. I'm going to show you some ways of making these little flowers. I first noticed them in Suzanne Golden's work. And whenever I put them in, I think of her. So you all can do that as well. And then Anvi Shaw, our wonderful Anvi Shaw, is going to show you how to do the zigzag line. And Anvi is also going to show how to use the graph to plan work. So if you're someone that likes to color and think through that, she'll be showing you a little bit of that.
That's a
And
great idea.
yeah, the other section that we have are lectures, and we have invited several wonderful lecturers from different parts of the world who are involved in beads, and they have graciously donated their time to share with you their thoughts on our topic. And our topic this year is, what is it? It's possibility and inspiration. And I'm sorry, it's
Good.
process and inspiration, all of which is
Even
possible.
better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sam, I wanted to mention too, with your beautiful triangle, you actually have the spines is what I'm calling these little are on
Yeah.
yours are gold, and that's just beautiful. So that would be another possibility.
Yeah. An
I didn't
idea.
see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yours continues all the way around and
Yeah.
unifies. And I was kind of making 3 fields of patterns,
Oh, that's so
different,
smart.
different patterns.
So
And
smart.
I guess the other thing is, Deb, I had a hard time explaining to you how to not cross over the line between the tool and the frame. And can you give some
Well,
words to that?
I think that what I thought of was when I was weaving my new thread, or when I was weaving my tail in or starting my new thread and its tail, I just thought of the new color thread had its home was in the new beads, and it wasn't going to go back to the old beads.
That's a good way
That's
to
how
look
I
at it.
thought of it.
Yep. Yep. Is you want the home for, I think it was your white thread, was never to cross over into the tool, because you can see it would give you more threads to cut.
Right,
And could make the extraction a little bit more difficult.
right.
So, Deb, I cannot thank you enough.
I'm just so excited about your project. I
Oh,
can't wait to see what
thank you.
people send you.
I know it's going to be
fun.
exciting to see those developing and popping up on the Facebook page. So, honey, I think this is terrific. I think we fit in everything that we wanted to convey. And I
Yep.
guess for now, I'm going to love you and leave you.
Mwah.
Bye, everybody.